In the inequality n is greater than m plus c and n is less than d minus m, with c and d are constants, if m equals 1 and n equals 2 is a solution of the inequality, which of the following statements concerning c and d must be true? So here we are given 3 statements about c and d, and we are asking to determine the truth of the statements. And to do that, we can use the given information that m equals 1 and n equals 2 is a solution of the inequality. Then it means that these two values satisfy the inequality. Then we can substitute them into the inequality. Then we will have 2 is greater than 1 plus c and 2 is less than d minus 1. And this is a compound inequality. And remember that if we have a compound inequality in the form like b is greater than b and b is less than c, actually this inequality is an intersection of two inequalities. Therefore, these inequalities can be rewritten as a is less than b and b is less than c. Then using these concepts, then we can rewrite our inequality as 1 plus c is less than 2 and 2 is less than d minus 1. From the first inequality, if we subtract both sides with minus 1, then we will have c is less than 1. And from the second inequality, if we add both sides with plus 1, then we will have 3 is less than d, which is equal to d is greater than 3. So now we have two inequalities about c and d, which is c is less than 1 and d is greater than 3. And using these two inequalities, we will determine the truth of the given statements. But before we do that, we can see the given options in this problem. From options A and D, each of these options always have the second statement. It means that the second statement must be true, or otherwise we will have no answer for this problem. But we need to check that the second statement is actually true. And the second statement says that d minus c is greater than 2. So this inequality actually combined our two inequalities before. And to combine two inequalities, remember that we can add two inequalities if they have the same sign. In other words, if we have a is greater than b and c is greater than d, then if we add these two inequalities, then we will have a plus c is greater than b plus d. And the same concept is also valid if we use less than inequality sign. So using this concept, we see here that we have different inequality sign here, and to make it equal, remember that the inequality sign is flipped if we multiply them with negative numbers. So we can multiply this inequality with minus 1. So we will have minus c is greater than minus 1. So now we have two inequalities with the same inequality sign. Then we can add them to get minus c plus d is greater than minus 1 plus d 3. And minus c plus d is equal to d minus c, and minus 1 plus 3 is 2. So now we have d minus c is greater than 2. And here we have shown that the second statement is true. And our next task is to show that whether the first statement is true and whether the third statement is true. And we can start from the first statement. It says that the product of c and d is negative numbers. Remember that the product of two numbers will be negative if one of them is negative numbers. And here we have that d is greater than 3. It means that d is always positive, while c is less than 1. And the value of c can be less than 0, and or the value of c can be greater than 0 but less than 1. If c is less than 0, then C is a negative number, then the product of C and D will be negative. But if C is greater than 0 but less than 1, then C is positive numbers, then the product of C and D will be positive. So the first statement is not correct, so since it can be negative and it can be positive. And to make it clear, we can take a number for that. We can take C to be half and D to be 4. Then the product of these two numbers will be 2. And here we can see that the product of C and D is positive, while the first statement say that it is negative. So the first statement is not correct. Then the options containing the first statement will not be the answer. Then next, we need to check the third statement. It says that the sum of D and C is greater than 2, while D is greater than 3 and C is less than 1. If C is positive numbers, then this inequality or this statement is true, while if C is negative numbers, then it can be false. For example, if we take C to be minus 5 and D to be 4, then D plus C will be 4 minus 5, which is minus 1. Then minus 1 is of course less than 2. So from this example, we can say that the third statement is not true. Then the second statement is the only true statement for this problem. Therefore, the answer is A. From this problem, we learn that if we have two inequalities with the same inequality sign, we can add them to get one inequality. But you may ask, can we get the same results or if we subtract them? Actually, no. We can take an example for that. We know that 8 is greater than 3 and 10 is greater than minus 1. If we subtract the first inequality with the second inequality, then we will have D minus 8 minus 10 is greater than 3 minus minus 1. And we know that 8 minus 10 is minus 2 and 3 minus minus 1 is 4. So now we have minus 2 is greater than 4, which is of course not true. And from this example, we can make a conclusion that if we have A is greater than B and C is greater than D, then A minus C is not always greater than B minus D. So we need to be careful if we want to add or subtract two inequalities.